All right, I'm going to keep the review section here at the very beginning in case you're someone who's just curious. I'll tell you my play style, and maybe if that translates to something that you like, it'll give you an idea whether Dying Light 2 is for you or for any game that I review. And then after I get through the review, I will go into a discussion part of it. Um, so I give Dying Light 2 out of 5 stars, Dying Light 2. I found that the best part of the game was the parkour, which a lot of people have said, and I agree with them on that. I think that it's really good. I think a lot of the abilities, though, are unnecessary, which is unfortunate because I like to be overpowered in games, but something like parkour, being overpowered in that isn't all that important. In fact, you're better off getting used to a few certain go-to things. So I'd say it's kind of a bloated skill tree. It would have been better off to create some other skill tree, in my opinion, that would have given the game a deeper way of playing it. I'll also say this. I feel that from what some of the other... I feel like some YouTubers they're easy to please. And I'm not. And I feel I'm a little bit more like Simon Cowgill, is that his name? I forget, I don't know his last name, who was on, oh heck, I can't remember the name of the show now, unfortunately, with the singers and all that. He was always the toughest reviewer. And no one cared what anyone thought but him because he was hard to please. But if you could please him, you could make it. And so I think sometimes pleasing the toughest people that are harder to please is actually much nicer. Not that that means my reviews mean anything more than anyone else's, because they don't. But it might tell you something that if I like a game and you're easy to please, if I like it, then you may definitely like it, because I'm hard to please when it comes to games. I've been playing them so long. I did not like this game, and I think that it lived a lot on the first game, and I didn't think that game was great either. And I have a controversial take that I'll get into in the discussion, but I'll just say also about my play style. I like to play games at normal, as medium difficulty, what default difficulty. I don't make them higher, I don't make them lower, and I'm realistic about this. In my opinion, I don't think developers can make a game to satisfy all playstyles. If you want a harder game, just setting it to more difficult probably isn't going to be the experience they optimize the game for. And if they tried to optimize it for all playstyles, it's not going to be a good game. So keeping it normal was the difficulty on. I thought the difficulty was spot on. I thought that it was really good difficulty. And I'm pretty casual when it comes to mini games, not to all, but to games like this, I kind of want a more casual experience. I rarely set a game for higher or lower difficulty, as I said, so I kept this at normal. That said, I felt that the combat was good at the beginning, and I had a very controversial take on that, but it wears thin. Zombies are boring to fight against, in my opinion. Humans are a little more interesting to fight against in the game, but not much as the game draws on. And the ending, I didn't finish the game. I didn't rage quit and rage delete it. I just made an assessment and realized I didn't want to play the game anymore. After about 30 hours in, I just got to the ending. I was in the epilogue, and it was fight, 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 fight. And the story wasn't nearly interesting enough to keep me entertained or to keep me engaged. And I realized, I was like, well, do I care what happens? I was like, okay, I'm going to go on YouTube and see what the endings are. And there were multiple endings, no spoilers here, but I was like, I don't know which ending I was headed towards, so I'm not going to bother with the ending, and I really don't care. So I just quit the game and deleted it. Not rage deleted it. I just knew it wasn't fun. The ending is just nothing but fighting, and the fighting mechanics aren't good enough to make that kind of ending. They wanted you to combine parkour with melee. That was the idea, and it doesn't work. If you're somebody who's really into that, maybe, and if that sounds good to you, great, but let me tell you something. You don't need to do that. You can just dodge. And that'd be good enough. There's also, at the very beginning, they try to teach you this ability to knock your opponent down, or not down, but kind of knock them out, then jump over them and kick your next opponent. It was a really lame mechanic that wasn't interesting, and I didn't even feel like learning it. And guess what? Didn't have to make it through the game until the very, very end. At the very, very end, like I said, it ends up you using resources, and it was like, okay, here's a fight I got out of it, and then another fight and I got out of that, and then another fight when I say get out and won the fight, and then there was another one and I was like, I'm done with this. This is boring. I'm just done. There's not enough story here for me to care or context for me to care. Do not recommend this game. Like I said at first, I thought I would have. Okay, so that's it for the review portion. I'm going to go into the discussion portion here. Let's talk about the open world. The open world at first is fun to traverse, especially with the parkour. I don't think the parkour ever gets fully old. The world itself is dense enough that there's enough variety to keep you interested as you go through the game. That's good. Are there reused assets? Everywhere. You see reused assets constantly. But if you're only going through the main story, you won't get bored. If you do side quests, by the way, all the side quests are repetitive and boring, and absolutely the development of the side quests were so uninteresting. Like my favorite side quest to do was go to the windmills and climb them. That was cool. I didn't mind that so much. But beyond that, there's nothing that was interesting. It was too bad. And I was like, they said the game was like 300 hours if you did all the side quests. Who could do that? Nobody could do it. I can't. You must have some kind of reserve in you that is unfathomable to me if you could do that, because I just couldn't. I've got pretty bored with that pretty fast, unfortunately. So the side quests couldn't keep my interest. The world itself, as I said, is dense, but there's not a lot of variety, and it doesn't take long even through the main story. It's enough through the main story, and if you would want only 40 hours out of this game, then it's plenty. I don't think it's worth it, but that's my personal opinion. There's a lot of things to say about some of the boss fights in this. They're not too bad. They're not like Elden Ring level boss fights, okay? But there's one boss fight where you got to fight this person 3 times in a row. You think they're dead, you fight them again. You think they're dead, you fight them again. You think they're dead, you fight them again. And it's like, can we get through this? Furthermore, there's some stealth elements, and it's one of these things where if you make the game too diverse, it's just here's another stealth element, here's another combat element, here's a parkour element. You put all these things together, you become a master of none, and so the stealth isn't interesting. I think they would have been better off saying, okay, doing one of two things. As I said in the review portion of the game, they should have reduced the amount of parkour and focused on something else, or there's an alternative. They could have made it almost entirely about parkour. Drop the melee element and make it where you just try to get through. And I know that's controversial. I mean, a lot of people want the melee combat in games like this. But you have to ask, I mean, what could they have done if they'd spent more time focusing on something? And since every game has tons of melee in it, why do that? Not a lot of games have great parkour. They could have made this game another Mirror's Edge. And I heard one reviewer compare this to Mirror's Edge. This is not as good as Mirror's Edge. Not even close. Mirror's Edge is a fantastic. I think Mirror's Edge 2 is better than this game. And that's controversial. Another thing I'll say that's also would be very controversial, if there was a big Dying Light 2 community, this game would be better without zombies. That is a strange thing to say. But the game's not scary. Maybe some people found it kind of creepy. Maybe even time to time I found it kind of creepy. But I just think the zombies were boring. It's like they come at you in hordes and you just slice them down. I would have been more interested to have more bosses, more humans to fight, because at least there's a little more strategy to some of that. But even that wasn't very good. I hope you get what I'm saying here. It's an interesting discussion about open world gaming, where they want you to do all these gameplay loops, and they're all just little bite-sized loops, right? That last about maybe 5 to 10 minutes apiece, and then they flood the world with 75 of these. And there's no way you're going to engage in those throughout the course of the game and actually find them interesting. And that was one of the problems with this game, is there's just no way you could find everything it had to do to actually be interesting. So that was part of the game that I just thought was truly unfortunate, because the potential's there. That's the last thing I'll say about this, is that this game was shipped with tons of potential, but they developed this game for years. And it's still just a game with potential. And why is that? Because there's no focus. There's just no focus. There's, again, bloated parkour. If they had just focused on it, it would have been fun. And if they had made all the open world elements, all the things you do, related to just parkour, it would have been fine. And I think they do a lot of things. I'll say one, this is a bonus thing. I did my last thing and then my bonus thing. These developers and publishers worry about way too much about what you're going to say about a game. And what I mean by that is this. They want to be able to say, we have a skill tree for Melee and a skill tree for parkour and this and that and this and that. And they're making the games for what they can legally say about a game. But these games would be much better off if they would focus in. Yes, there's less they could say about it, but the game itself would be better, and word of mouth is very, very powerful. If this game had focused on parkour, I know I keep saying that, and said, okay, we're going to make the game the best game we can make it what it is, relate all the open world elements to just parkour. It would not be a Dying Light game. I'm aware of that. You wouldn't have been able to say we have a melee system, right? But you could have a game that people would talk about and really enjoy. And instead we just end up with this game with just tons and tons and tons and tons, an ever expanding toolbox of things. And none of them are particularly good. Parkour, I'll say, was good in this, but not enough to interest you for the open world elements. Through the main storyline, it keeps your interest long enough. But once you get done with that, there's not much else to do. I estimate that I missed the last 30 minutes of the game from what I could tell from YouTube videos. I don't think I missed anything. And I played as much of this game as I want to play, and I don't want to play a second more of it. Hopefully that's helpful to anyone who's interested. And I really hope that this game I hope in the future, if they make another Dying Light, that maybe they'd make something a little more streamlined and interesting. Have a good one.